So now that we know the theory of how and why crop rotation works, it will be much easier to design your own crop rotation schedule. The first thing to consider is how many crops you want to grow and how many different beds that you have. I would advise to have a rotation that's at least 1 in 6, for which you would need at least 6 beds. As some crops go well together, carrots and onions for example, or tomatoes and marigolds, it's possible to group them in the same bed. Which plants complement each other can be found on the internet when you search for list of companion plants. I will also provide a link on this course page. Another strategy is to group different plants from the same family together in one bed, for instance onions and garlic, so that multiple crops from one family can be grown while still adhering to the 1 in 6. A basic crop rotation schedule that should work quite well in most regions on Earth is a crop rotation of 1 in 6, with the first crop a crop from the leek family, something like onion or chives, then a legume like beans or peas, then a grain crop like corn or wheat, a nightshade like tomato or peppers, and then a plant from the cabbage family. And finally a plant from the carrot family, the Apiaceae. After that you should grow leeks again. Instead of a nightshade you could also grow a plant from the Amarantaceae, like beets or spinach. The crop schedule would not be as nice, but it should still work most of the time. Also a Cucurbitaceae could be added to the crop cycle, for instance in place of the cabbages. Using this schedule should minimize the pests and diseases on your crop without the use of pesticides. However, pests will still occur, and when they do in large numbers, you should still adjust your garden accordingly, for instance by temporarily removing the crop from your garden or by stimulating the natural predators. If you want to do a more thorough job, however, the next step will require a lot more work. So let's say you have made a list of 6 of the plants you want to grow. Then it is time to look up a good description of this crop and what the most common pests and diseases are. Next, you will have to check whether these diseases and pests also occur in the crops that you want to grow next. These lists can be found on Wikipedia, for instance, when you search for the crop you want to grow, or in many garden books. Some of these even provide a list of the crops that can be grown next for your region. Books and other information specific for your country or region are a very important tool to have. Most pests occur only in parts of the world and are therefore only a concern for that specific region. Many of the most important diseases, on the other hand, are already widely spread around the globe and often are already present in the crop that is grown in your area. A very useful tool for the selection of crops can be the crop succession diagram. Here is shown a diagram that can be used in the Netherlands and is even useful in most countries in Europe. However, the more different the pests and diseases are, the less useful this chart becomes. I would therefore try to find a diagram that is specific to the country you live in. So far, I've been able to find a diagram for the Netherlands and a similar diagram for Canada. Both I will show in this course. Still, it is useful to understand how this chart works, so that you understand that some plants can increase the amount of pests without taking much damage themselves, while others do lose a lot of productivity when a pest is present. Now, how does this diagram work? In this diagram you can see how well the previous crop, above, matches with the next crop, which is shown to the left. In the boxes you can see how well these two crops match. When the box is green, the two crops match well, and when it's red, the two crops match very poorly. Not only that, the boxes will also show why it matches poorly, be it diseases, nematodes, insects, weeds, due to structural decay, or due to a surplus of nitrogen that is provided by the previous crop. For the sake of clarity, I will zoom in to just a few crops. As you can see here, it would be a very bad idea to grow cabbage for 2 years in a row, who had problems with both nematodes and diseases. It is, however, very well possible to grow cabbages after carrots. At the same time, it would not be a very good idea to grow carrots after cabbages, as this would result in nematode problems. One thing this diagram doesn't show, however, is the influence of the crops before the previous crop. In an ideal situation, also the crops before the previous crops should be shown and matched with the current crop. As it is already hard enough to design a crop rotation without taking this into account, I would advise you to accept that it's not always possible to have a perfect crop rotation. Also, this next diagram shows the effect of previous crops on the crops planted, this time for Canada. Here you can see the crops on the horizontal axis and the previous crops on the vertical axis. Although the different pests and diseases are not shown here, it should still give you quite a good estimate of whether a previous crop matches well with the next crop. As you can see, many crops even have a positive response on the yield. If you are not able to find a good diagram for the USA, for instance, I would advise you to use this as a starting point. If you want to dig even deeper, then I also have some more recent charts for you. Unfortunately, these are in Dutch and I'm not allowed to copy them. For those interested, I will provide the links to the charts, as well as a translation and an indication for the distribution of the pests, so that you can still use them if you really want to. These charts are quite extensive and therefore there will always be some pests or diseases that occur in both the previous and the current crop. Now please select a few crops you want to grow and have a look at the diagram to find which crops go well together and which crops don't. In the next chapter I will show you a few examples of a crop rotation, both some decent schedules and some bad.